Hey there, in this video we're going to talk about the mental health benefits of having a relationship with God. So can God heal trauma? How does faith affect our mental health? Can a relationship with God heal emotional wounds? We're going to answer all those questions. Science is showing that your relationship with God deeply impacts your brain, your nervous system, and your emotional healing. So let's dive into how does that happen. Well, number one, humans heal through relationship, and I would say humans heal through safe relationships. We are wounded in relationship, but we are also healed in relationship. And as humans, we are wired for connection. We need community. We need other people. We need connection with other humans. We are biologically driven to attach to others in order to survive. Neuroscientist Kurt Thompson says that when each of us comes into the world, we enter it looking for someone looking for us. That's our biggest need. That's what we long for, to be seen, to be heard, to be understood. Our deepest desire and our highest hope is that there'll be someone looking for us, and that this person will always be there for us and will pursue our hearts with a genuine desire to truly know us. So our greatest need as human beings is to be known and to be loved, even though we are known. And that can be a little bit scary sometimes because we are not always what we think we should be, and so vulnerability feels risky because what if that person gets to know me but then they don't like me? And we're going to talk a bit more about how God does that for us. But as a child, your most important attachment was your connection with your primary caregivers, and in most cases that's your parents. And these relationships shaped your brain more than anything else. Specifically, your relationship with your primary caregivers or your parents shaped your ability to regulate your emotions, which simply means your ability to calm yourself when you get angry, upset, anxious, whatever. It shaped your ability to be aware of your emotions. It shaped your ability to bounce back from distress, harm, or tragedy. It shaped your style of relating to others throughout your life. One of the requirements for healthy attachment is attunement. And attunement is simply having someone so attuned to you that they knew what you were feeling on the inside. They're in tune. Attunement means, I know what's going on with you. We're on the same page. And our reality is that we may not have received what we needed in our early developmental years. We may not have had the healthy, safe attachment that we needed with those who were our caregivers or our parents. And you know what? That can leave us feeling alone, aimless, sad, anxious, unsupported, and like we don't belong. Even though we are in a family, we can still feel like we don't belong. And the good news is that this is all fixable. Emotional healing happens through secure relationships. The most important relationship in which we heal is the one we have with God. And I just want to remind you that God is attuned to you. He is looking for you. He is always there for you. He will pursue your heart with a genuine desire to know you. And when He knows you, He will still love you. And there has to be no fear of losing a connection with Him because I'm being real with Him. And I think that sometimes that fear of being known and then perhaps not loved is what keeps us from really being honest with God about who we are and what we are experiencing in our inner world. I'm going to talk more about spiritual bypassing in another video, so watch out for that. But your relationship with God can become a secure attachment relationship, healing attachment wounds and pain from trauma, abuse, and neglect. When we cultivate a relationship with God, He becomes a source of safety, a source of comfort and stability, identity, reassurance, and emotional regulation. My experience has been that God has gone back and reparented me in all the areas where my parents failed me. And let's be honest, our parents do fail us, even though they try to do their best. I failed, even though I tried to do my best and avoid the mistakes that my parents made. I still made mistakes, and I have to own those. But God has the ability to go back and reparent each one of us and fill up the holes in our hearts that we received as a child. You can hear my clock chiming in the background. In fact, if we don't allow God to do this, we end up looking to other humans to heal us. And that's a burden we were never meant to put on anyone. Besides, no other human has the ability to heal us anyway. We cannot bring our brokenness to another person. Only God can do that. And yes, healthy relationships with other people is part of the process of healing, but that is not, can I put it this way? It's a resource that God uses in order to heal us. But ultimately, it is God that brings the healing, and He directs us into healthy relationships so that we can learn new ways of relating and heal those wounds that we received as a child. If you haven't yet watched the video on healing father wounds, this is a very important video to watch, because you can't have a relationship with God if your perception of God is broken or toxic, or that He is not a loving Father, rather that He is vindictive, waiting to punish you, looking out to just catch you doing wrong. So you want to heal that relationship with God. You want to heal that perception of God so that you can cultivate a relationship with Him, a safe relationship with Him, a healthy relationship with Him. The next point is that prayer and Bible study calm the nervous system. Science shows that prayer reduces stress, meditating on Scripture calms the mind, gratitude and praise reduce anxiety. Time with God in reflection and meditation activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the one that makes you feel calm, connected, focused, rational, peaceful, joyful. That sounds like a state we all want to be in 99% of the time. The reality is that it's not always possible, but this is what spending time with God will do for us. It helps us calm ourselves. It's calming and regulating to spend time with God. Now, I'm not going to dive into these two, the prayer and Bible study, much more, because I'm going to do separate videos on both of those topics, because they have an amazing impact on your mental health. So stay tuned for those videos as well. All right, point number 3 is the fact that we feel seen and known helps our mental health. One of the biggest struggles, one of the biggest mental health struggles, and a huge part of emotional suffering is the fact that we feel alone, and we feel shame, and we feel unseen, and sometimes we feel abandoned. And we all have that deep, deep need to feel seen, to feel heard, to feel understood, and yet still loved in a relationship. And the relationship with God provides all of these things. It provides unconditional love. It provides acceptance and meaning to our lives. It gives us hope. It gives us identity beyond or outside of our performance. It helps us to feel seen and known and understood, and yet still loved. And so when we experience this kind of love and acceptance and understanding in a relationship, the nervous system relaxes, and it promotes mental and emotional health. Number 4, hope changes the brain. Hopelessness, you know what you feel. You know what happens to your body when you feel hopeless? Your body starts to feel heavy and down, and you don't want to move. You feel sluggish and slow. Hopelessness worsens our mental health. And when we feel that there's no way out, nothing to live for, there's no purpose to our pain, our mental health deteriorates. But God is the God of hope. Romans 15 verse 13 says, "Now the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, that you may abound in hope through the power of the Holy Ghost." So faith in God provides us with that hope. He gives us back our hope. He gives us purpose to our lives. He gives us hope for our future, like He says in Jeremiah 29:11. It gives us future orientation. In other words, looking towards the future with a hope for the future, rather than just more of the same struggles and emptiness and hopelessness and despair. We look to the future with hope that our struggles are going to end. And then faith in God also provides us with the belief that pain is not meaningless, that God will bring good out of it, that He can use it to be a blessing to ourselves and to others. And this restores our hope. So God is the God of hope, and it changes how our brains function. Number 5, God helps to regulate emotions. So spending time with God helps you recognize and pause impulsive reactions based on pain. It can help you process emotions honestly instead of suppressing. And stay tuned for a video on spiritual bypassing. So it's going to slow down our racing thoughts, because we have to, in order to sit down with God and really commune with Him and hear from Him and spend time with His Word, we have to slow down, and we have to be still, and we have to listen. Like He says, be still and know that I am God. Spending time with God creates internal stability and it develops self-awareness. In the Psalms, we see David expressing his emotions honestly instead of suppressing them. He prays for justice on his enemies. He laments his sins. He expresses his sorrows, his joys, and his troubles honestly. So Christianity is not meant to be emotional suppression. It's emotional surrender and transformation. And like I said, more on that in the coming video on spiritual bypassing. So to be honest, I learned emotional regulation through learning to surrender myself to God. And in order to surrender myself to God daily and in the moment, I had to be able to identify what I was feeling, which is the first step in emotional regulation, because you can't process an emotion unless you've named it. And so in order for me to say, Lord, take my frustration, I had to know that I was feeling frustrated. I had to stop and pay attention to what was going on inside of me and go, oh, this is what I'm feeling, so that I could give that to God and so that I could receive from Him His heart transplant, like Ezekiel 36 verse 26 and 27 talks about, where He says, I will give you a new heart, I will give you a new spirit. So surrender to God taught me how to do that. One way of identifying emotions and learning to identify emotions is to journal daily. Watch the journaling video linked below. You can also download the emotion tracker, which I'll link below as well. Journaling develops self-awareness and fosters emotional regulation. And journaling is part of my quiet time with God every single day. And I take that time to connect with what am I feeling right now, because very often my quiet time with God is directed by what I'm needing that day. So I ask myself the question, what am I feeling today? What am I needing today? What am I thinking? When I know what that is, then I can come to God with an informed request for the things that I really need this morning in my quiet time. Lord, I'm feeling anxious this morning. What do you want to say to me about that? I'm feeling frustrated, or I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling lonely, or I'm feeling stressed or pressured. When I know what those feelings are, I can bring them to God. Then He speaks to me directly about those things, and that makes my quiet time with Him really meaningful, as opposed to just sitting down and reading a bunch of words, a bunch of texts, or whatever, and there I've ticked the box and done my duty. Whereas when I'm in tune with me and I'm self-aware, I can bring that to God with honesty and receive from Him something that's really helpful instead of just a bunch of information. And I will tell you that this is what makes quiet time rock. It makes it so amazing because you are connecting with God at an honest level and receiving from Him what He has for you. And that's just beautiful. So don't forget to go and watch the video on healing father wounds if you haven't watched that yet, because remember, you want to get this relationship with God working, and in order to have it working, you've got to have a right perception of who God is. And part of that perception is informing your mind with what is truth about God, rewriting what your mind thinks and believes about who God is. And so I'm going to link below also biblical affirmations that you can read every single day that will help you to change your perception of God and see God as He really is, and start internalizing the kind of God that we really do serve, and that He is not like we think He is very often. And remember that perception of God is usually shaped by our parents and the way they treated us, specifically our fathers, hence the video on healing father wounds. But check all of that out in the box below, okay? Healing happens through rewiring. So because of trauma and emotional wounds, our brains are wired to respond a certain way when we sense a similar threat. But we can undo this wiring and create new wiring, which is called neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections. Repeated experiences of peace, truth, safety, and love can gradually reshape patterns in our brains. God made our brains to heal and be restored. So meditating on scripture can interrupt fear-based thinking. It can replace shame with truth, fear with trust, hypervigilance with a sense of safety. Romans 12:21 says, be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. This is how sorry, I'm struggling with this rewire. This is how we rewire our brains to be in harmony with what God thinks and with what He says. He encourages us to be transformed by the renewing of our minds, Romans 12 verse 2. Time with God transforms us. and changes us and heals. Now, there's one thing we need to remember as I end off. Relationship with God is not instant emotional perfection. Right? Just because you're a Christian or you have a relationship with God doesn't mean that you're never going to have mental health struggles at times. Life throws stuff at us, and sometimes it knocks us hard. We go through traumatic events. We lose people we love. We go through stressful times. We have things happen to us that are pretty horrible. And relationship with God helps us to bounce back, to be more resilient, to process, to heal. And I think sometimes it must be really, really hard for God to stand back when we go through tough times and we then question Him. And I'm not wrapping anyone over the knuckles for questioning God as to why they've been through hard things. But it must be so hard for Him to have us do that, because that's not His intention towards us. That's not His heart towards us. His heart towards us is good and caring and love and protection. And yes, sometimes He does allow bad things to happen, but that's probably another topic for another day. But let's remember that God's heart towards us is one of love. So healing is gradual. It's not an instant fix. And God often heals through process, through healthy relationships with others, through practical tools, through therapy, through relationship with Him. And so healing isn't just about removing pain. It's about learning safety, connection, truth, peace, and hope again in relationship. And relationship with God can be the safest place that your mind and your heart and your nervous system has ever known. Go ahead and download the biblical affirmations and get started with reading them out loud to yourself every single day, and see the transformation that starts to happen in your thinking and your feeling, as well as watch the video on healing father wounds so that you can get this relationship with God in the process of healing and being restored, so that it can bring you the blessing that it's designed to do for you. We heal in safe relationships, and God is safe. Until next time.